Welcome to the Get Wisdom podcast. And for you folks looking for maybe a new way to do life, figure out how to get unstuck in, well, any area of life, really. Or maybe you just need a new perspective on your current circumstance. We can definitely assist you with all of those things. Check us out at www.getwisdom.cc.
I'm Miranda.
And I'm Jay.
And today, we'll be taking you through the white paper by Brent Zeman called Breaking Free from Alcoholism.
Oh.
Our goal here is pretty straightforward. Provide you with actionable insights. We want to distill the core knowledge of this material quickly for you.
Yeah, and what I think is great about this source material, this white paper, is that it doesn't just rely on, shame or judgment. Not at all. It's really framed as more of a practical toolkit. It's about restoring self-governance.
Exactly. And that this deep dive, we've designed it to really clarify the true costs of alcohol, costs that are often hidden, right? And also the pervasive nature of its normalization in our culture. It's everywhere. So we're going to focus intensely on autonomy, accountability, and crucially practical pathways for stepping away from using alcohol as like a default coping mechanism. Think of it as a field manual for making wiser choices. Definitely not medical advice. We need to be clear about that.
Okay, so let's unpack that foundational philosophical starting point the paper opens with. It's this principle of autonomy of the individual. The source is, well, pretty blunt about it. It says, your body, your consent, your call. That's the adult deal. So it really starts by placing all the power and therefore the responsibility squarely in the individual's hands.
And that's so critical because if you connect this to the bigger picture, the whole argument that follows rests on this massive caveat, which is autonomy without accountability is, and the source puts it nicely, simply chaos with better PR. Autonomy sounds great, liberating, but it's only really meaningful if you're actually ready to accept the full scope of your choice.
Okay, so if you choose to drink, what exactly is the paper saying you're choosing along with that drink?
You're choosing to accept what the author calls the full ledger. That's the term used. And that means you tally everything, the benefits, sure, but also the risks and, importantly, the consequences. And you do this without excuses, without, pushing blame onto someone or something else. This really shifts the whole mental frame. You go from maybe feeling like a victim of habit or culture to being the principal actor in your own life. It forces you, the listener, to see your choice not just as some temporary feeling, but as a kind of binding contract with your future self.
I found the paper's redefinition of freedom particularly interesting, maybe even challenging. It states that true freedom isn't the absence of limits, the idea you can just do whatever you want, but rather it's the mastery of self-chosen limits.
Right. It's such a powerful idea for anyone trying to learn or change something. That setting, and more importantly, adhering to a boundary you set for yourself, that's an act of ultimate self-mastery. Think about it practically. Say you set a limit, maybe 2 drinks, and you actually stop at 2. You've exercised control. You've guaranteed yourself a clearer mind tomorrow. That's a win. Now, if you didn't set a limit, maybe you ended up regretting the night. Well, technically you were limitless, but you actually ended up chained by the consequence, didn't you? So the paper argues freedom is really measured by how well you govern yourself against your own agreed-upon standard. It kind of begs the question, for you listening, how does that redefine freedom for you right now in your current circumstances?
Okay, moving from that personal philosophy to, well, the social reality. The source dives into alcohol's place in society, and it notes how it enjoys this really strange and ubiquitous social hall pass. We see alcohol as the default at weddings. It's almost required for business dinners. It's the centerpiece of so many bonding events.
And this creates a pretty severe cognitive dissonance in society, doesn't it? Alcohol, which has, let's be honest, serious, well-documented physical and psychological risks. It's normalized, even encouraged almost everywhere you look. Yet other substances, maybe less harmful ones, often plant-based, they carry this intense social stigma or, severe legal penalties. The paper highlights this hypocrisy, and not really to criticize the substances themselves, but more to show how deeply embedded alcohol is in our social contract.
So why does this matter? What's the why it matters here for someone who's actually trying to make a personal change?
Well, the cost just compounds. If alcohol is allowed to be your default social glue, or even worse, maybe your only emotional anesthetic, the negative impact, it just metastasizes. It creeps into critical areas of your life where you really need to be sharp. Your professional judgment, the quality of your relationships, your performance day to day, and fundamentally, your integrity. The great danger here, according to the source, is that we end up borrowing society's rationalizations, the everyone does it defense. Instead of conducting an honest private audit of our own use, we basically outsource our conscience to the culture around us.
Let's dive a bit deeper then into the psychology of coping. If we're using alcohol to cope, the paper describes it as a fast, blunt tool, something that just dampens immediate discomfort, often gives you that rush of false confidence.
Yeah, it's the ultimate short-term fix, isn't it? When you're under emotional or social pressure, your brain is essentially bargaining for immediate relief right now, but it's sending the entire bill, the accumulating bill, plus interest, you could say, straight to your future self. That relief mechanism, it might solve a 20-minute problem, but it creates this long-term pattern of, well, emotional evasion.
So what are the specific psychological patterns the source says we get hooked on? It's not just physical dependence, right? It's these more subtle traps.
That's right. And the sources detail three pretty predictable patterns that can turn occasional use into, like, a required cycle. First is that cycle of emotional numbing. Repeatedly dulling discomfort leads directly to a reduced capacity to process normal everyday stress when you're sober. And this is followed almost inevitably by rebound guilt and shame, which of course drives you right back to the blunt tool.
Ah, so you start drinking because you feel bad, and then you
Yeah.
feel bad because you drank. Creates that perfect loop.
Precisely, exactly. The second one, the paper calls the social identity loop. This is where that initial performance, maybe the thought, oh, I'm fun when I drink, it gradually hardens, calcifies into a kind of forced brand. You start to feel compelled to drink just to maintain that constructed social identity, even if your sober self is actually suffering because of it.
And the third one, the term trigger stacking, that really struck me. It's a fantastic way to explain relapse, I thought.
Trigger stacking, yeah, it's like the physics of relapse. It's the idea that, okay, a single strong trigger, maybe you can manage that. But when you combine multiple, maybe even milder stressors, they become overwhelming together. Think of the classic scenario, the source details. You combine physical fatigue from a long day, maybe plus a minor conflict with a partner, plus the easy access of, say, a chilled beer just waiting in the fridge. That combination fatigue plus conflict plus access, that's the stack. And it makes a lapse almost predictable. The white paper basically says recognizing that stack, seeing it forming, is half the battle.
Okay, so we've established the philosophical cornerstone autonomy and also the social and psychological roadblocks. But if autonomy is sacred, then, as the paper says, so is the duty not to outsource the consequences. So to guide this self-governance, the source introduces this really robust four-part ethics-first framework for personal responsibility.
Right, and this framework, it's the structure that's meant to replace the chaos of just, emotional decision-making in the moment. It's called ethics first because it really requires integrity at every single stage. Let's detail these four actionable steps.
Okay, starting with clarity.
1. Clarity. This means you absolutely must name the honest why behind the impulse or the actual drink. Don't just accept the easy answer like, oh, I'm relaxing. Is it truly connection you're seeking? Is it simply escape from discomfort?
Right.
Is it pure unthinking habit? Or maybe it's image management trying to look cool or fit in. The framework demands radical honesty here because you can't solve a problem you refuse to name accurately.
Okay, that makes sense. Next is the act of setting limits, boundaries.
2. Boundaries.
Right. And these must be limits regarding quantity, frequency, context, maybe even who you drink with that you would genuinely be proud to defend when you're completely sober. The key here is pre-commitment, deciding before you're in the situation. So if you decide on Friday morning, okay, tonight I will not drink more than 3 units, you've essentially removed the decision from the moment of temptation later on.
Which flows perfectly into the next step. Integrity.
Integrity, yeah. This means tracking your choices daily. The paper really emphasizes this, calls it non-negotiable for self-mastery. What you measure, you transform. That's the quote. And look, this isn't about shaming yourself, not at all. It's about collecting objective data. Did you meet your self-chosen boundary? Yes or no? That tracking over time illuminates patterns that our simple memory conveniently forgets or, glosses over.
And finally, step 4 is repair. Because, let's face it, mistakes happen. 4. Repair. Exactly. If harm occurred, maybe it's a missed commitment, a text you regret sending, or even just breaking a promise to yourself, you have to own it quickly. Apologize if needed, make amends where possible, and, critically, immediately change the pattern that allowed the harm to occur in the first place. The key is speed and definitive action, not getting stuck dwelling on guilt for ages.
This framework seems really critical because if you don't use something like it, the consequences, they're so tangible, but often invisible until they really compound. The risk landscape review in the paper kind of anchors the importance of this framework, showing how impairment impacts real life.
We're definitely not talking about abstract problems here. We are talking about, impaired judgment, that feeling where, oh, I'd never send that email sober becomes, I cannot believe I sent that email. We're talking about chronic relationship friction, where small arguments blow up into really damaging conflicts because alcohol was involved. And look at the productivity hits. The significant financial drag from high bar tabs, expensive late night online purchases, maybe related health costs down the line. This framework is designed specifically to prevent these slow accumulating losses.
Okay, we've established the why, the philosophical imperative, and that ethics first framework for integrity. But if you, the listener, are ready to actually move, how does the paper suggest you start the practical process, resetting those neural cues? The answer it gives is the 14-day alcohol reset.
Yeah, and it's really a genius piece of practical advice, I think. 2 weeks, that's long enough to actually start initiating a change in habit in those neural pathways. But it's short enough that it doesn't feel like this impossible, overwhelming, lifelong commitment right from the start. And crucially, the focus here is on disciplined, achievable tasks, not expecting some sudden, heroic surge of willpower that probably won't last.
Right, so what are the most specific, actionable steps the listener can take, starting with day 0?
Day zero commit. Okay, the very first task is purely declarative. Simple but important. Write a single, concise, one-sentence intention for these 14 days, just one sentence, and then share it with one person. But the source specifies, share it with someone who actually tells you the truth. It really emphasizes that truth teller requirement. You need accountability that involves honest, maybe sometimes uncomfortable feedback, not just surface-level support that makes you feel good. Then, daily, you absolutely must track. Daily track. Log any cravings that come up. Note the precise time the trigger was. It's social, emotional, physical, and the feeling you were having right then. And the revolutionary rule here, I love this. Slips get data, not drama.
That reframing, treating a slip as data, not drama, that feels like a massive psychological shift, moving away from that punitive thinking that keeps people stuck. How can someone listening operationalize that idea? Like, what data should they actually be looking for when a slip happens?
Great question. They should look for the patterns in the data collected around the slip. So if your cravings consistently spike at 7 p.m. when you check the news, the data tells you, okay, 7 p.m. and the news, those are the real triggers, maybe not just general stress. If a slip happens, the key is don't spiral into guilt. Instead, log the exact circumstances what led up to it. What boundary was breached? How did it happen? That specific information is the key to preventing the next one. It's incredibly valuable.
Anyway, moving to environment substitutes, this is where the physical change happens, right?
Exactly. You have to aggressively manage your environment. That means removing all alcohol from your home. Don't just hide it somewhere. Get it out. And be firm, at least for these 14 days, about declining invitations to heavily drinking-centric events. Protect your reset, and this part is vital. Pre-decide on 2 or 3 zero-proof options that you genuinely enjoy drinking. Don't just rely on sparkling water if you hate it. Have a plan B, C, and D for non-alcoholic pleasure or comfort. Make it easy on yourself.
The paper even provides a specific technique for managing those moments of acute stress or craving.
It does. It's called the stress protocol. When you feel a strong craving or a trigger hitting you hard, the technique is very specific and time-sensitive. First, use a 90-second breath cycle. Just focus on breathing for 90 seconds to regulate your nervous system, calm things down physiologically. Second, take a short walk, even just around the block. Change your physical state, get some movement. Then, and only then, after the breath and the walk, make your choice about how to proceed. The order is critical. Relief first, decision second. You should never try to make a boundary decision while you're emotionally hijacked.
And finally, there's the foundational support system, the stuff that allows the mind to function clearly in the first place.
Absolutely. Support the physical system. Prioritize sleep and fuel. That means aiming for a consistent bedtime, even if it feels a bit early, and making sure your meals have a good balance of protein and fiber. The paper wisely notes, tired brains negotiate badly. It's so true. A physically depleted brain will almost always choose the easiest path, which is often the very habit you're trying to break.
And as you undertake this reset, the paper provides these specific reflection prompts for self-inquiry. They really force you into that radical honesty we talked about earlier, like asking yourself, what am I pretending not to notice about my relationship with alcohol? That just forces you past the easy social narrative, doesn't it?
It really does. And perhaps the most piercing question, which ties right back to that integrity component we discussed. When I picture my most credible, capable self, my best self, how often is alcohol involved in that picture? That question really pits your current habits directly against your highest aspirations for yourself. It's powerful.
So to summarize the core conclusion from Brent Siemens' white paper, alcohol might be socially endorsed, sure, but your life. It's not a group project. Whether you choose to drink, maybe with greater self-mastery using these tools, or you choose to stop entirely, the demand is actually the same. You must own your choices, design a strong structure for yourself, and relentlessly adhere to those self-chosen boundaries. Integrity in this whole process, it really pays the highest, most consistent dividends in the long run. And we want to leave you with a concluding provocative thought. This is drawn directly from the Sources Conversation Guide, something for you to mull over today. Consider this. What boundary will I defend even when it's inconvenient? Hmm. Think about how making and holding that choice actually reinforces your freedom in the way the paper defines it. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into Brent Siemens' white paper.
And we want to remind listeners, please contact Brent Zeman directly at 972-301-2878, or you can email him at getwisdomprinciple@gmail.com.
And please be sure to check out our sponsors. You can find them at www.getwisdom.cc sponsors. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you tomorrow right here on the Get Wisdom podcast.